Welcome back, everybody, to another video in our mapping series here at Southern Outdoorsman. I'm Andrew Maxwell. This is Jacob Myers, the ginger bow hunter, as you can see from his red hair. Today we're going to do a little bit different video. We're going to be breaking down a specific spot, and we're going to be talking about why we think it's a good spot based on the diversity and the habitat, what appears to be thick cover on the map, as well as the terrain features, like compounding features, which we've alluded to in a lot of these other videos. And this spot has pretty much all of that. So we're going to kind of dive into it. So when we first look at the spot, it's a little bit hard to see on onX because it's just everything is really, really green. But this is on the hybrid mode. And I guess we'll go ahead and switch it to topo so we can see a little bit more clearly what's going on here. This is the initial thing that brought our attention to this spot, was this large thermal hub right here. What makes this spot a little bit more special than it just being a normal thermal hub is it's got a bunch of saddles dumping down into it, which we've done with these red lines here. So this is what we would call like a landscape funnel, a very, very large funnel, actually connecting this thermal hub to this thermal hub. So that's a really, really good looking saddle right there. Also, another one. This is kind of a thermal hub over here with another very, very large landscape saddle dumping down into our main one. We also got a saddle here, and a saddle way over here.
And the saddle actually to the far south right here, this is actually another saddle that connects one thermal hub to this thermal hub. So again, we have three different thermal hubs dropping down into this one based off saddles. So there's a lot of cool diversity here, along with the compounding features, which we're going to describe in just a little bit. Andrew, take it away.
So that is like what a compounding feature is, I guess, from a terrain standpoint, is where, you have like a thermal hub by itself is a good thing. A saddle by itself is a good thing. But when you have those two things feeding into one another, it makes it a much better thing. So deer are going to be going into the spot for that thermal hub. They're going to be swinging through there, scent checking scrapes, probably a bunch of oaks in there. So they're going to be swinging through that thing, just doing their, doing what deer do. And then those saddles are going to be pushing them into that spot. Those saddles, as they come into and leave that thermal hub, those saddles are kind of funnel their movement. So, again, both things by themselves are good, but together they're really good. So now we'll talk about a little bit more of the habitat diversity here. So we'll turn on onX. Once again, if anybody from onX is listening, please get rid of the summertime imaging.
No, just give us option where we can have a fall imagery filter or something like that, where we can switch between summer and fall. That would be fantastic. But
yeah,
continue.
So you can kind of see. Again, it's hard to tell, but you can see these little red lines that we had earlier that are showing you where these saddles. This is one of the landscape saddles. This is another landscape saddle that we were just talking about. And although you can't tell a whole lot about the habitat here, we can tell that this is a low spot, and you can see the canopies are pretty large. So this is going to be your deciduous hardwood trees, hardwood bottom stream management zone, or SMZ, as you hear on the podcast all the time. And then we have these like straight cut lines up here. That's going to be your edge between that and the pines. So all these like more, again, to bring up another term, like green carpet looking areas, that's going to be your pine trees. So I'm now going to leave onX because it's almost useless for that, because you can't really tell much about it. So now we have a leaf off image, and now we can really tell what we're working with here. This is a little more updated than the onX image. So this is now a cutover. Again, this is our landscape funnel. And this is that other landscape funnel. So this one right here is really interesting because now we have this brand spanking new cutover. This image is from March of this year. So this was cut last winter, so it's going to have this full growing season. So this is going to be an excellent, excellent food source all summer and fall for these deer. There's going to be a lot of stuff growing in that cutover that they can eat. If a lot of sage comes up, it's going to be really good bedding. So when you look at this, that just looks absolutely fantastic. This large saddle is going to have cover running through it. So deer are going to be a lot more likely to use that, and it's going to run down here into our main thermal hub, which is this area. Now, if we look over here, we got thinned pines, so we can see ground in between these pine trees. It's not like that green carpet effect. You can look in here, and you can see in between the trees. You can see the shadows and everything, and so you know that this is going to be thick as well. So there's going to be a lot of underbrush underneath all of this stuff that deer can bed in, they can feed in. So I'm going to assume this could be a bedding area right here, right above this thermal hub, which makes it that much more valuable for a buck cruising through there.
So another thing about this area that's really interesting is the overall diversity of habitat, and that's one thing that kind of catches our eye when we switch from OnX to Google Earth is the actual mapping itself, along with the aerial imagery and what kind of details we see. Andrew's already hit on the cutover in these thin pines, but the same thing up here as well, where we have a large landscape saddle coming through these pines, along with a large landscape saddle coming through these pines right here, connecting this thermal hub to this thermal hub, which is very, very interesting, and especially as it looks like these pines have been thinned as well. So there's a lot of diversity in this area. Diversity is key. That we talk about that on the podcast all the time. We have a lot of guests that talk about that as well. Is finding the diversity and also finding the different break lines, like what you would see right here. These edges between pines and hardwoods, and again makes for a fantastic spot, not only for deer to kind of travel through, but also be able to go from one habitat type to another habitat type. Is again kind of shoot through these edges. As we kind of look down a little bit farther, you can kind of see just the overall diversity. Again, how these pines on top of these ridges have been planted versus all these hardwood drainages and everything else, and how these saddles kind of overlay in them. Again, all these lines overlay these different saddles. This right here, I would guarantee would make for a fantastic spot to put a trail camera somewhere. If this was a hunting club, private land, which is this private land we're looking at, or again, even if it was some public, to hang a trail camera somewhere right here on this road or right off this road in this saddle. I'm sure there's a lot of trails crossing right here.
Yeah, check that road for tracks. That'd be an excellent place to check for tracks.
And you can tell again it's a dirt road as well, not gravel. So yeah, easy place to check tracks, especially after the rain itself.
And to interrupt you there, that is how I killed a buck a couple years ago on film. It's on our YouTube channel, and that's how I killed that buck. Jacob was actually out driving these roads, driving through these saddles, looking for tracks. Found some tracks, said, hey, there's some tracks going into this spot over here. I went in there like the next day or something, or 2 days later, and killed that buck. So, I mean, it's a really good way to gather information on whether or not the deer are using these things. So I actually love seeing where a road goes right through a saddle like that. It might discourage some people, but the deer are still going to use it regardless.
But this is one thing that's very important to realize is when you're looking at these areas, don't rely solely on any one mapping system. It's important to have multiple different things that you're looking at to kind of confirm what you think is there. Whether you're using OnX or any other service like that's on your phone, using Google Earth as well, which is a fantastic service, whether you're on a desktop or on your phone as well, or an iPad, which I personally like using for scouting. And then also using different systems like Sentinel Hub, and like CalTopo as well, especially CalTopo for a very detailed topographical map, which you can find free online. But all those features, again, really play a factor into why this area really jumps out as an area with a lot of diversity, an area that has quite a few compounding features, and also not only having the diversity and compounding features, but has the access for a hunter. You could come in and hunt this at a bunch of different angles, which is really, really nice the way it lays out, and having that larger creek system down below you. It's an area that, if we had access to this property, it would be fantastic to go in and hunt. But unfortunately, we don't because it's private land. But Andrew, got any kind of final thoughts or anything in regards to kind of compounding features and the diversity?
Go scout it in person, as always. And the last thing I'll say is when you do go scout this, one thing that I like to do is, and I use OnX for this. So OnX is not that, it's okay for what we're doing right here, like inside the house and everything, e-scouting. Obviously, I like to use Google Earth and other stuff just because you can get wintertime images and better topo maps and stuff. But when I'm in the field, OnX is like really, really hard to beat, and their tracking feature and everything is extremely useful for this exact application. So I like to come into these thermal hubs, and I'll actually walk the edges of it, and I'll go up in this draw, and I'll check this out, and then I'll come down and go around this point and go check this out, and I'll just work my way around the edge of this thermal hub just like that. And then, if these roads are drivable, I'll get in my truck, and I'll drive down these roads, and I'll check out all these saddles where the road crosses. And see if there's tracks, see if there's obvious trails coming across or anything like that. And that's just one way you can effectively scout these. Go look at stuff like this little pine hill right here. Even on these summertime images, you can kind of see in this little area right here, you can see those pines are a little bit thinner, so that's probably going to be some good bedding. So go check out all those things and just confirm that the deer are using it. And that's a good way to go scout it. And then that's going to tell you whether or not that's one that you should hunt. Now that I've learned how to do this, I'm pretty much always looking for compounding features no matter what. If you can find two, that's better than one, as many things as you can get that will give you an advantage in that one spot. And when I go to an area, I like to find, several different things like this that I can go scout while I'm out there, or I can bounce in between them and, check them all out and see what's going on at every single one of them. But that's pretty much all I got. It's a really interesting spot. I'd love to be able to go hunt this.
Yeah, another thing is the most common compounding features we see, at least in Alabama and some of these other states we hunt, is where you have a thermal hub with a saddle dropping into it. That's going to be like the most common you're going to find in most areas, which is great. And again, when you find a single thermal hub with one saddle going to it, that's great. If you have two thermal hubs on each side of the saddle, that's even better. If you have two saddles dropping into one of those thermal hubs, that's even better than that. So there's different ways to get a better and better compounding feature by looking at the map. And again, this takes a little bit of time going in the field and knowing what to look for, along with how to be able to pay attention to the maps and find the right icons and everything that you're looking for. That's going to hold the deer, but also make it for a very good approach for you as a whitetail hunter to go in there and kill that mature buck. But other than that, I mean, that wraps up kind of my thought on compounding features. Again, very easy to read on a map once you figure out what you're looking for, and very important to use multiple mapping systems. I'll just reiterate on this: multiple mapping systems to figure out exactly what are you looking at on the ground. So that's where Google Earth really plays a huge factor in for us and what we're trying to find. But other than that, guys, appreciate y'all listening to the video or watching the video. Hopefully you listen to the podcast as well. Make sure you subscribe to both the YouTube channel, the podcast, and if you like any of these videos that we've been putting out, let us know. Leave us some comments below in these videos. Give us a thumbs up. And again, we'll continue to put more and more of these videos out come fall, along with some really cool interviews, also with the VideoCast podcast coming out as well. So thank y'all so much, and y'all have a great week.